So first of all, thanking Jorge for being willing to come and do this with us. It's nice to be able to have you come and talk to us. And as I mentioned, we had technical problems, which is why we're late. And I know Jorge mostly through the work with Maturana, and as a very gracious and kind person. When I had my one visit to Chile, it was very nice to meet with him in person. And you have a vast background of which I'm only aware of some things, and that is working on natural drift as an evolution. So perhaps you could tell us a little more of who you are and what your interests are, even though today you will be speaking more about this natural drift as a minimal theory with maximal consequences. He did write a paper on this recently too, so I think that reference is available to you. So Jorge, could you please introduce yourself a bit? And then, one more thing I was going to say. I was asking Jorge, would you like to have questions at the end or throughout? And his preference is to have this more interactive. So if you have a comment or a question, please put up your hand and I will try and catch you and interrupt Jorge and say, hey, so-and-so, Elena has a question or something like that.
Okay.
Okay.
So now I am in the big screen. So thank you very much for the invitation, Pile, and thank you to you all for being here. I don't know which kind of curiosity question do you may have, and I don't know if I will be able to answer this thing. I can talk a little with you about the natural drift idea from the fundamental aspects and trying to bring it to life, bring the idea to life with you here in this talking, in this conversation. But as Pili say, I will pretty much appreciate if you have questions on that can orient me in the way that your curiosity. And of course, you will have to forgive me because I'm talking this over English. I have been immersed in Spanish my whole life. And then I did a little presentation, but I didn't realize that it was from an English audience. So but I will translate the titles in the most relevant aspect. So who I am, Pile asked me to tell you who I am. I am nobody. I am just a professor in the University of Chile. That I have been interested in these issues because I don't know why. Because it's the way that life came to me. Not that much to say about this. I have been teaching in this realm for a while, and I enjoy it. And I appreciate the interest that you can have in this. But I have to say that if nobody else in the world have interest in these topics, I will still be thinking and maybe writing about it. So I don't know if you have some question or something particular that you want to maybe.
There is Jerry. Jerry, you're muted. Unmute yourself.
Just to break the ice and to start the conversation, why do you think genetic drift is substantially distinctive from other forms of drifting?
Because, well, I can be honest to you. I don't think that evolution is about genes. Genes have to be, they are involved in the process of evolution in the way of evolution in organism, biological evolution. Of course, genes are involved, but they are not the protagonists. They don't have the main role. It is the organism. So drift is going to, yeah, you can look at genetic drift, but genetic drift is not defining what happened in the diversification of the lineages of organisms. It is the behavior of the organism what has the main role. This is what is natural drift about.
Let me rephrase my question because I don't think I communicated what I wanted to say. So there are many forms of drifts. There's snow drifts, there's drifts on the seashore of sand, there's drifts of leaves accumulating in my yard. That's what I meant by drift. So why is this drift different from other drifts?
Natural drift, you mean the one that we are talking about here?
Yeah,
It is
yes.
not different, it's a drift. It is a drift of the organisms in history. It is not different from any other drift. It has different consequences. Consequences because what is drifting is not a snowball or a gene, it's an organism that is drifting in ontogeny and phylogeny. So the consequences are different because the things that are drifting, the objects that are going to drift, are different in every case. So genetic drift and organismal drift are not the same thing, even when they can be related. Through the way in that genes and organisms are related.
Perhaps this will all make more sense once we see some of your visuals and hear your talk.
No, drift is happening everywhere, that every time that you have a historical process, a system, and that is going through an historical process, you are going to have a drift. Even in culture, for example, with these technological artifacts like the TV and the internet and etc. We don't have computers. We have computers over our desk from the last, I don't know, 30 years or something like that. If we withdraw computers from our life, the world comes to an end. 50 years ago, there were no computers. But once that you have the computer there, the life change around the computer. So the operation to do computations become conserved. And everything that happened from there on is going to happen in the conservation of computation, because if not, the whole thing is going to disappear. So there is a clear, nice case of drift. You know what happened? I said that there are a horror. The people talk about the horror backwards. I will say that is a horror to autonomy. It's an autonomy horror. Horror autonomies. We don't want living beings or system to be autonomous. And every time that we have to deal with autonomy, we try to find the rules that rule the autonomy, the causes. We don't like autonomy. There are a principle. Autonomy is a principle that gives rules to the processes. We don't like spontaneity. To be something to be spontaneous, is awkward, make us unhappy. We don't like spontaneity. We like rules. We like causes. To deal with autonomy, make us unhappy. We have to find something that is ruling the autonomy, genes or whatever thing, the medium forces, etc. We don't like the things to be like they are. beings cannot just be what they are. They need rules, they need causes, they need forces, they need everything. To see, let me put this scenario that I have in one slide. Let's imagine a bacteria, and this bacteria is in a milieu. There is in the dish, and in the dish there are different temperatures. So it's cold here, it's very hot there, and it's warm in the middle, let's say. So what is going to do this bacteria is depend upon where it is. It's in this gradient, it's in some place. So it's going to move the pili until the warm place, and there it's going to stay. So what happened there? It is the bacteria that move in the world, or is the world that was moved by the pili of the bacteria? If you are in the bacteria, what happened? You move the pili and the temperature change. So what is the world in that sense? We like to see, because we are looking the situation, and then you will see the world and the bacteria, and, and we say the bacteria is moving in the world. But if you were in the bacteria, you will say, I move the pili and the temperature change. We don't like to think in that way because we don't like autonomy. Autonomy is a problem. For an autonomous being, the world where the autonomous being lives appears with his living in there. It's not there waiting for him. And this is a fundamental thing. The basic thing about the whole idea of natural drift. What is drifting is the way of living, not organism in a medium. It's the way of living of this organism. And as I say to you at the beginning, it's depend upon what thing is drifting, the consequence that that drift has. I don't know if nobody wants to say nothing.
I think we may be waiting to see what you have to show us as well, even if it is in Spanish.
Okay, so I have this thing that is like it's a very scholar thing, let's say, it's for a broad audience, and I think maybe it's worth to show it because I think I will be able to recreate this very same idea that I was expressing before. With
But
some,
David, you had your hand up for a sec. Did you want to ask something before he starts?
sorry, I didn't hear you.
I had my hand up, but then you started going on into getting, and I thought, oh, well, I'm going to wait for that. But the background sort of reflection that I have, if I'm understanding, and I think I'm understanding the way you're using drift, that particularly for living organisms, they're drifting in a sea of drifters. So there's this kind of this constant change of their environment because their niche is co-drifting with them, and my mind gets a little boggled about trying to follow both of these things at the same time. But
yeah, the niche is something that you will like to see when you are describing the situation. What is the niche for the organism? It's happened that living beings are dynamic systems. So they are continuously changing. In a way, they are processes. They are not like rocks or other kind of systems that are statics, like a crystal. living beings are like tornadoes. Tornado is a dynamic of air molecules. It's not the molecules, it's the dynamic. If you stop the dynamic, the tornado disappears. That is an object. Yeah, it's a process that remains while the conditions allow the thing to happen. But you can't in a tornado or in a river, you can't stop the flow, because if you stop the flow, the object disappears. Living beings are the same way. You can't stop the molecular transformations, because if you stop the dynamics, the thing disappears. So change is not the problem in the sense of a structural change. Change is constitutive, it's always happening. The problem is the direction that change follow. What has to be explained is the direction of the changes, not the change. So I am very passionate, sorry. I am very Latin, so I get very, very passionate with I talk this way. Sorry about that. I know you know, even when, well, you know, I am Greek in origin. Maybe that explains it. My fathers, both of them, are Greek. So this thing of to be passionate is, I don't know, that happened to me because of that, I think. So, sorry about that. But the idea is that, you know, it's not change. You know, change is always happening. Change do not require a force in the case of autonomous beings. Well, look, we are all familiarized with the idea of the Big Bang. Big Bang, if we think about for a moment, is the most extraordinary, incredible thing. But we are all of us, we are ready to believe it and to accept it. But when I say change do not need forces to be produced, it's more difficult to accept that. That the Big Bang,
This
that
explanation.
is
Jamie,
totally incredible. See?
Jamie is planning to say something.
Hi, thank you. I'm most concerned about specific mechanisms that might be involved. From what you're describing, I get the sense that it's still very much in line with Darwinian adaptation, that, you know, you're still very associated with that, with what he described 200 years ago or so. But one of the earliest things with all those possible changes that are going on, one of the things we're challenged to identify or to understand is how the environmental specific situation feeds back directly to an appropriate change within the genetics of an organism. Because it's like saying that if there's a change in respiration pressure, in air pressure temperature or pressure temperature, that the respiration rate of the metabolism would change. But if a change happens in the body form of the feet or wings, that could be a change that is affected, but that doesn't respond. It's not an appropriate response to the environmental change. So in that whole sea of so many different changes happening, it's seeing that evolution tends to be appropriate changes in the body form of the organism.
Proper to be what you are.
I'm sorry?
These are proper. Changes that happen to a hen or chicken are proper to be a chicken.
Right, right. One of the earliest examples that one of my
I'm
evolutionary
talking
biologists
yes, for
explained,
to be attacked, even when they live in the same place, and they live in the same way, and they eat the same things, and they breathe the same air. But one is a
right.
chicken and the other is a duck.
Let me give you a slightly different example. The evolution, the transformation from being aquatic animals to living in oxygen and in the air. Part of it was enabled by the change of say, fish's fins to become legs.
Yeah,
A part of it changed from gills, required to change from gills and respiration to lungs. So the oxygen was gained not through water, but through air, et cetera. But those things happened for thousands and millions of years in the biological and the record, the fossil records. But what the one change that was finally necessary was the change in the kidneys of the organism from being able to process salt water to be able to process fresh water. And it was that which was key, even though the mechanical structures were there, the lungs were there, or in transition, the transportation body parts were there, but it was the water be able to carry their own water out of the aquatic environment, which was the key change that allowed life to come into oxygen onto the land instead of in the water.
yeah.
So those is a combination of variety of things, and very directed change to the specific need that the environment is pressing the organism to make that change.
Yes, I would say change are not necessary for. They just happen and allow the things that came with that changes to occur.
So you don't think there was a direct feedback?
I don't think so. Is that the metaphor? Is that the example of the computer? Computers are not necessary. You
But they were
can live.
used.
All right,
Computers
so
are not necessary to realize to actually live, to actually organize a culture. But once you have it, the whole thing changes around that.
well, then shouldn't we be
So
seeing?
the animals came out from the water in many different ways. There are crabs living in the trees that never go to the water. Of course, crabs came from the sea, but they start living in trees and they reproduce in the trees because the bromelia in that tropical forest are so huge that they are like little dam, water. How do you say water dam? Like a pond, a little pond in the trees, and there the animals put the larva, and the larva reproducing there, and they live in the trees. So you have now a whole lineage of crabs living in the trees.
Okay, but I'm getting the impression that from what you're describing,
Seabirds came out from the sea, from in the marsh, in the mangle jungle, and they stay out for hours, and they don't have lungs. How did they move? They move because they move in the. I am going to show you the example. Let me show you this. Maybe you will enjoy it. Okay. So look at this one, if I can show you. See, those are Argoidae that lives outside. They eat here and they go back. Look at this guy walking on this tree in the mangles.
right?
See? And they from where they came? Well, they came from these guys that they move, they don't swim. all of them have this very strong pectoral fins that they with they move in the bottom. All of them have water in the mouth because they live in this landscape where they for a moment they are out of the water. So they breathe the water they have in the mouth, between the mouth and the gills.
Right.
And then some of them goes out. And then they stay out. So from where this guy came? Well, they came from this condition. So it's the conservation of this condition in the derives. The ancestral is conserved. The ancestral condition is conserved in the new ones.
But
And
those
then,
phenotypic, the body changes don't happen without a specific, accurate, appropriate genetic change.
what I am saying
Is that correct?
that behavior is first. Changes came after. And
But it's to the appropriate
after those changes,
body form that's required by the environment. So that would indicate that there is some sort of directed feedback that does target the appropriate genes instead of a random gene.
because in my view, they are not an environment. The environment came with what the animals do. They are not an environment waiting for the animals. The environment is what the animals do. And every time that an animal do something, something happened to it. That depends upon what he does previously.
Ah. Okay, well, that's one view. Okay, thank you.
Let me stop sharing, and maybe we can go to the other, or there are something else that. Okay, let me show you this. Maybe we can go from one to another question. So this is in Spanish. It's no matter this title, but I have these figures here that allow me to show what I want to put in the first place. See, this came from a drawing made for a student in the high school. So those are microorganisms moving in a gradient. And this guy is a nice lizard that is taking sun. And this guy is a little chicken in the process of development. The question here is autonomy. And what is more relevant, these living beings, they exist while they act. They are acting entities. To act in this way, allow this way of living. The same here. They are acting entities. They cannot stop acting, because if they stop acting, they die, they disappear. And they change and act in a way that depends upon the way that they are constituted. There are no rules. Rules are intrinsic, are related with what they are as living beings. The sense of the actions, it is intrinsic to them. In a way, this guy is taking sun because he's cold blood, so he's taking sun. So to be doing this is part of his homeostasis, to say it that sense. So if he acts like it is acting now, he can realize he's living. And it's not necessary to do this, because we don't do this. Mammals, we don't do this. We do other things. So if we are if we are inside, if we are from the point of view of this guy, we are inside him, to do this is to get warm. This is the way in that this guy, I invite you to see this in this way. This is the way doing this is the way that this guy is creating the sun, if you want. He moves, he puts in there, and then it's cold, it's warm. For a while, because after a while, he ran away. Disappeared, the sun disappeared. He moved, disappeared the sun. He put in here, the sun is in there. Now I am warm, so we move away. The sun disappeared. So sun come and goes by means of the acts of this guy, the actions. The same happened to them and to this guy also. This is what it is, autonomy. Changes, and the sense that changes have, the sense of the action has, is intrinsic to these different ways of living. In this environment, there are many, many possible ways of living. Many different ones. It is not mandatory to do this. For this guy, yes. For the other guys that are in here, no. This has been saying, let me show you this. I don't have it here, I think, no. Yeah, this was, von Euskul, 1930, 1930. He made the same assertion. Nobody listened. Let me go back for a while. So the question here is that these changes in this chicken, there are not a chicken here, and you can see how the chicken appears. In every moment of the history of this entity, there is a living being acting in an continent where he is realizing his living. In every moment. This is not a transit. It's a sequence of states that came one after the other as a consequence of the acts that this living being realized, performed. I don't remember, Pile. You remember that our friend in Constructive Foundation didn't want to realize. Remember?
Oh,
She,
yes.
yeah,
Alexander Wiegler did not like the word realize because
yeah,
he equated it with reality.
yeah. So he wants to write what was the word? I don't remember.
Realize.
Yeah, but what was the one that he suggested?
I've forgotten to.
Yeah, I forgot also. Yeah, this is an acting entity in every moment. And what happened? How is that? This is what I was saying before. It's not a matter of the changes. Changes are going to happen. The question is the direction that changes follow. Ah, they are animated. People look at this cartoon and say they are animated. because you see them changing by themselves. This is a recreation of the autonomy, this cartoon. They are not cheered up, but they are animated. Because you see them change by themselves. They have purposes and sense. And what they are doing have sense for them. And came from them and have sense from them. So how these beings are constituted? Look, this is a phrase, interesting phrase. So it say life is then a tornado, more or less fast, more or less complicated, where the direction is constant, and that is dragging always molecules of the same times. But where the molecules, the individual molecules, come and go continually, enter and go in and out continually, in a way that the form of the body is more essential than the matter. You know, this is Georges Cuvier. It's Georges Cuvier, Mill. So at the beginning of the 19th century, the idea of autonomy, the idea of dynamics, dynamic autonomous systems, living beings, dynamic autonomous system, is substantial to biology. This sounds so modern and so contemporary is Cuvier. So form, he talked about form in the sense of Aristoteles. How do you say Aristoteles in English? Aristoteles, I don't know how to say it in English. Is the form. Form is relation between parts. This is what it is, form. The tree has a form. It's not the particular tree. It's not this tree or this tree or this tree. It's the relation between the trunk and it's the arborescent form. What is this distinguished? So what is the form? And this is what, what is the form such that from the realization of this form, the result of the realization of this form, of this dynamic form, is a living being. And this is where the notion of autonomy is the notion of autopoiesis take place. Molecular autopoietic machines that do what I suppose that you know, the concept of autopoiesis. Explain this is my version of what it is in the original De Máquinas y Seres Vivos book from the 1973. So what is essentially saying here is that it's a network of molecular process that do two things, that through the interactions in the network, they produce the molecules that form that constitute the network, and also give rise, determine a border that is also a process. So living beings are discrete, molecular, dynamic molecular entities. And they are autonomous by definition. Because everything that happened to them will happen will come from the molecular constitution, dynamic molecular constitution they have. And at the same time, they are continuously changing because they are processes. the change can be stable, or the change can be these living beings will undergo transformational changes, let's say, or moments of transformation, moments of stability, but they will be changing continuously. So this came from Maturana, and you can see this always that I see well, I can but note that look the hairdress of Professor Cuvier and look the hairdress of Professor Maturana. Is this romantic hairdress that seems to be necessary to think in this way? I will say so. Is Maturana very, very young? He's in his 30s. And this is the drawing that is in the book Máquinas y Seres Vivos, that is changing the idea, is trying to make an illustration of the idea of autopoiesis. But the principle, the relevant thing, Maturana always was he was very even pushy about the idea of inviting people to consider living beings as discrete entities that have a border. They are not just a soup of processes, it's an entity that have a self-constituted border. And then it is continuously acting, and it is always in interactions, dynamic interaction with something, with the continent where this thing is realizing his living. So we can see, sometimes I say this is when I want to be very professorial, I say this is the fundamental equation of biology. This is an illustration. What is showing? This is the living being acting in the environment, giving rise to this way of acting, this way of being there. As a consequence of the interactions, this guy transformed himself to this stage. This is a continuous flow of structural transformations that result one after the other from the internal dynamic and the interactions. But every time that the structures change, the way in which this living being is acting also changes accordingly. And that moved the system to another state in which he is acting differently. Something different happened to him then. So he's continuously transformed. And this is the egg, and this is the hen that lay an egg. So how is that this guy is going from here to here and not to other places in structural terms? Well, which is the process that
George, I have
determine the direction that this thing follow.
a question with this. So if this model is accurate, would you assign the word learning to this interactive process?
Usually people will, let's see, this is the moment of the inception, after the initial moment of the reproduction. After that, the egg, the fertilized egg is put in there. And let's say this is the moment of the free living. Yeah, people will say learning, it depends upon what learning means. How do you define learning?
Appropriate adaptation, responding
Yeah,
to the
because you are
information in an
looking
appropriate way.
because you are looking it from the point of view of the external medium, thinking that the animal is this guy is adapting to a pre-existent place. But this is what I am trying to say, that this is not what happened, because this place is not a place until that the animal reach it and realize it as a place.
All right, there's another way of looking at the same relationship then. Instead of saying the word learning, which I see for you carries some kind of intentional interpretation,
It's
it
not
could also it could also be, pardon me, it could also be a trial and error process. Many different changes are happening, and then the appropriate ones are continued along because they're good responses. The ones that are not appropriate.
I am not trying to say that. I don't think there are intentionality here, try and error, or that the guy is working is.
No, that's what I'm saying too. It's not an intentionality, but it's just
Even,
reacting positively to the one the changes are good, and they're co-effective between the environment and the life. Then they will take place. They'll get established. The ones that are not appropriate will not get established. They'll be left aside.
Look, what I am trying to say that this guy didn't want to be living, to be alive. He just is alive until that he stopped being and die. He don't want to be here. He's not going to here. When the guy start here, he's not going to here. He end up here as a consequence of a drift, of a structural drift that result from historically from the interaction of this guy being what he is with the environment. And this happens sometimes and sometimes don't.
Claudia, you have a question too.
See?
You're muted.
You muted.
Sound.
Yeah, I just wanted to insert something here because I think I have read a number of texts by Uexküll, so I'm kind of but I think what is the most difficult to understand is that this view really it requires a shift in perspective, because there is no pre-existing environment. The environment is always made with, through action. It is always constructed with whatever is acting,
Yes.
And so there is no adaptation in that sense, because there is no pre-existing environment. There is
It's not adapting to nothing. The guy is adapted in the sense that continues living, or is not. So he's dead.
Yeah.
And what is that? What is that? What is the object with that the animal or this living being? What is the object that the animal found in here? What he found, I don't know, find or found, it came with the actions. It's very different what the fly found in my desk regarding what I found in the desk. There are no desks for the fly. Even when I see the fly in the desk, there are nothing. There are nothing in the action of the fly, the behavior of the fly, that reveal us that it is in a desk. Look, if you have an ant over this desk, my desk here, you can see it, but maybe I don't know if I show you because it's very messy. So I'm not going to show my desk. but the ant goes to the border and then goes down to the floor. But if I put here let's say a turtle, the turtle is going to die over the desk even when the food is in the floor, because it's not going to jump. There are a cliff for the turtle. There are no cliff for the ants. If you're a turtle, you have a cliff. If you're an ant, you don't have. In the world of ants, there are no cliffs. Autonomy.
I think
As
we
I said before, the animal, the lizard, moves and the sun appears. He moves away, the sun disappears.
I think we often confuse the idea of autonomy with the idea of free will, which would be the matter of planning ahead in language what you want to do, which is different from just doing.
Exactly. I will say autonomy in the sense I will say is that the animal, this system is changing by itself. And it's not following a rule, external rules of internal or internal rule of any kind. So I will say here, those are dynamic systems that are in continuous structural change in interactions. So they are self-defined systems. So they define the limits. And they define also the way in that they interact with whatever thing that is the continent where they are. The continent, the surrounding, is defined by the system dynamic. And it's changing while the structure of the system changing here, changing this history. Well, they exist while the form autopoietic organization is conserved. And the state of adaptation, if we call adaptation to the operational congruence between the system and the continent, if we call operational to that relation of structural coupling, operational congruence, whatever you want to call it, the structural coupling is what Maturana wants to say. While the animal this system is structurally coupled to the continent where he's realizing his living, well, he's adapted. And then when this is broke, he died. But they exist in actions. There are structural correspondence between the animal and the medium. And why in this structural transformation, this state of structural congruence is conserved change after change, then the animal remains alive. And if not, they die. So it's not going to here. It's happened that came to here as a consequence of a history. It's a drift. Ontogeny is a drift, and phylogeny is also a drift. This is the idea. Let me show you. There is phenotypic. This is a little cartoon that I did with my hands. It's so ugly because of that. See, this guy is a fish. And the fish is a theoretical fish, let's say. So that's the teeth. This is the mouth. This is the tail. And what happened? The animal have a network here, a neural network inside, and it has these particular nodes of the neural network. this component of the animal have nodes, and this is what we will call receptors, the triangular one and the square one. Receptors, because every time that there are a perturbation in this node, there are a change in the effector that is the tail. And when the change happens, the animal moves in the environment. So what do you see here? That we are looking here, and there are these objects, this triangle, this circle with a triangle on this square and this thing. See, all the ones in here are attractors, because when the interaction take place, the animal moves and eats something in there. And those ones are repulsors, because when the interaction take place with these objects, the animal moves in the other way and he goes away. So this is what we see. And what are those objects that we see? Well, they are nothing. They are nothing, because the animal cannot distinguish them. They are nothing in the behavior that give reference to this object. For us, yes. For this animal, no. So the world of attractors, the world of repulsors. What happens if I change the structure a little bit and change now the order in which the network interact with the effector? It happened that repulsors, the attractor now are repulsors, and the repulsors are attractors. So to be repulsor of attractor is not a property of the objects. It is the behavior of the animal that is related with the structure of the animal in that moment, what gives character to these objects. And these other objects didn't exist in the world of this fish. So what is this? Well, it's dependent upon what the animal is doing with regarding that. Whatever thing that interact here is equivalent. This is von Euskul. This is autonomy. So the world where the world with this animal interacts depends upon the structure of the animal in every instant. And then let's suppose that the structure is changing in a way that is associated with those interactions. So then you have a scenario in which the animal transforms itself through his actions. And this is ontogeny. This is what this is what the chicken going from the hen to the chicken is doing. So I will say I like this metaphor, even when Alexander really didn't like it at all and he wanted to take it out from the paper. You can see, Pile, that I am still kind of
Annoyed.
annoyed about that.
Yeah.
So the idea, see, the operation of real constitutes what is real. This is the, let's say, the environment. What is inside? What is there written? Well, there is nothing unless that you read. Egos, Spanish, or delirio, delusion. If you read it the other way, delirio. If you read it in English, you can see the hill or the pipe or whatever. It's depending upon how you read what is reading. What is the thing that you're reading there? There ain't nothing written there because it's the operation of read. What constitute what is read? The object. This is what happened to my fish. And this is what happened to what will happen to any living being. It depends upon how you read what you read in there. We know that this is the case because we read. And we wrote in that way. Imagine that the animal is reading here the video because this one like to read in this way. And he read the video and do something and change the rule of reading. And then he will start reading different things. The environment is a pretext. The object with which living beings interact arise from the action. The existence of those objects is not independent of the living being. That's why different living beings living in what we think to be the same environment live different lives and bring forth different objects. But we are the same that these guys. We are living beings also. And we operate in this way. Or we are not autonomous, or we are ruled by rules that came from the outer space, or I don't know from where. Of course, we are free to think whatever we think comfortable. And this is the idea of the Big Bang. This is weird, but this is also weird. But we like this one, and this one make us unhappy, uncomfortable. This idea make everyone uncomfortable. I tried many times. But the Big Bang is so...
I'm wondering if people are holding more questions that they'd like to bring up because we are now coming closer to the end. And if you have something burning, you should bring it up now so Jorge can address it.
Yes. So just 5 more minutes. See, this is an interesting to see how many of these guys are living in this humedal. I don't know how do you say that, an humedal, a marsh. They live in the same place. They do different things. And you know, it's not the way, it's not what they eat. It's the way in that they eat that thing. What makes them so different. Ontogeny. Why we call this a drift? Because there are not a direction internal or external. The direction of these transformations came moment after moment. The very same process is given the direction every moment in this flow. Because what matters most is the action that the organism is realizing, carrying out, yes, that word, carrying out, to carry out. This is what Alexander liked it. To carry out moment after moment. So this guy is transforming himself through his actions in a way that is not intentional. Intention will appear to us when we look at this process. When we like the process to have, this was said by, I remember reading Kant about this. And he said that this was impossible to understand because this seems to be a process that have a purposes or a direction, but cannot be like that because it's a mechanism. And mechanisms have not intrinsic processes or directions. Cannot have. Can't. But if I look the process of the ontogeny, it seems to me that it has one direction, that is go to some place that is going from here to here with intentionality. Intentionality appeared to us, but it belongs to the space of design in our culture, intentionality. But cannot be an operational element in these mechanisms. So from where direction came? It came moment after moment. We don't need intentionality. If we are if we are humans and we live in culture and language, we can have intentionality as a part of these interactions. But it's not what is going on with the chicken in the air. Look this example that I like it the most. I don't know the most, but it's one of my favorite examples. This is a little duck, the mallard. And an innate behavior, supposedly genetically controlled, is that the animal, after eclosion, you can put two speakers. In one, you have duck sounds, and the other you have chicken sounds. And this guy will go to the duck sound speaker. Innate behavior. Yeah, but happened to be that the little chicken, the little duck, start making sounds inside the egg several days before the closure. If you devocalize the guy, open the egg, and put some colloidon in the syringe that do nothing nasty to the animal, and then close the thing, and then start the very early, like 3 days before he is going to have the closure, you just devocalize the animal with this procedure, and then after the air, the eclosion, you make the speaker test, and some is a chance. So the innate behavior disappears. And what happened is that when the animal start vocalizing, he can hear what he vocalized. So he learned himself. He transformed himself through his vocalization. And if you think this happened in this moment, that in the previous moment, and in the previous one, and in the previous one, this is going on moment after moment, or pre-moment after pre-moment, since the beginning. If you put the animal in an environment where there are a lot of chickens doing chicken noises, when the animal, after the eclosion, he will go to the chicken speaker. And examples like this, there are millions. millions. When you have the embryo in the pharyngula state, it's a little embryo. It is happening in every vertebrate. They develop a structure that is called the ciliar motor in the tail. That is an epithelium with cilia. And those cilia moves. And those cilia, those cells make secretion. They put secretions in the medium. And then the cilia move the fluid around. And this determines the laterality. The laterality, the right-left asymmetries are determined by a flow of molecules that the animal put in the medium and moves around. The same happens at the cellular level, etc.
Jorge, part of your title mentioned that this theory has maximal consequences. We can see the consequences as you're describing them to autonomous organisms. What about cultures? What are the consequences to cultures?
Cultures are going to drift the same way that organisms. It's a historical process. Every time that you have this, you constitute this starting point, systemical starting point, you will have a drift. Like the example that I give it to you with the computers.
Mhm.
So things change around what is conserved.
Mhm.
Look what is the drift, the natural drift. So this is an organism that is following this way of living, this ontogeny. It ends up like this. And he then lay an egg. But organisms are not the same, and eggs are not the same. These eggs can follow this history. And as long as they follow this history, that is a behavioral history, the history of the behavior, will end up in this way. But let's imagine that that one, for some reason, whatever reason, and we have to look at the circumstances. He's following this and then change in the way of living. This is the way of living of his ancestral species, and here there are some kind of jump to a different one that can be followed, and then we will end up with a different thing. And if this thing became conserved, this new way of living became historically systemically conserved generation after generation, you will have now changes in the constitution of these eggs around the conservation of this stage, that is the stage from which the eggs appear. So it is the behavior, is the flow of the organism medium relationship is the first guide for the course that the phylogenic drift follow. Eggs are changing, of course, because if we call to this the genotype, the total genotype, total genotype will change around the way of living, that the new way of living that is being conserved. Other ones, original, digamos, or other initial constitutions that are not akin to this way of living will disappear or will give rise to something else. And what is the most interesting is that what is in the derived is constitutive, in the ancestral form is facultative. The new thing came from a possibility of the ancestral thing, and this is going to happen in culture. Also, Alexander the Great organized his huge army showing flags of different colors. What we are doing now is the same thing. Because once you have a way to organize the world, the behavior of many people, then you bring forth a world where the organization of the behavior of many people take place. And this allow and this give rise to a whole culture built around that. So what change is going to happen? A change that make that easiest, more efficient, etc. So next step will be another technological medium to do this that will bring a revolution around that, and etc. So like the computers. The ancestral, the derive is always possible from the ancestral condition. So look at this. I have two more examples that I would like to show you. This is a Chile. This is about where the student of the evolution course and myself are around this island that is called Chañaral Island. We were, chasing dolphins, as can you see here. And this island is very interesting because there you have the nutria. Nutria is the name of the nutria. You know this guy, no? It's a nutria. It's a sea. I don't remember the name of it in English, but it's a nutria. And we have also sea lions that they live together there. Otter. This is a sea otter of the Chilean coast. Beautiful animal. And of course, there are hundreds of these sea lions in the island. And you can see them living together in the same island, the same coast, eating the same thing, but they are different. How is that they are different? Because they do exactly more or less the same thing in the way of, if you look at that island in the way of an ecosystem, you will say that these two guys are indistinguishable in terms of the ecosystemic process from where they participate. Yeah, from where the otter came? Well, they came from this one that is the bison. Neo bison. This is the ancestral form. And this one, from where they came? Well, they came from the Ursus bears. If you look at them to this way, you see how similar they are, no? A little transformed. But what is more interesting is that these bisones, all of them swim. And bears also swim. To swim, that allowed these guys to exist in here, came from the ancestral form. It's an elaboration of this. This guy is an elaboration starting from this one. And many things have changed, of course, because it's a bison that follow a path, a phylogenetic path, a drift. follow a drift. In that everything change around, feel on the water, in this case in the sea. And the same thing here. Here is the phylogeny showing you the phylogenetic relation. And this is the one that I like the most. This is Amblyrhynchus and this is Colonophus. Amblyrhynchus is the only one marine iguana in the world. It's in the Galapagos. And this is Amblyrhynchus is in Galapagos, is a terrestrial iguana. It's interesting because this one is the ancestor of this one. There are no more iguanas in Galapagos. And this one is unique to the island. So this one is similar to some ones in the continent. So this has to be the ancestral or very close to the ancestral form. And this is the derived form. And you see them in the island. And they live together, they lie there together, they go one after over the other, like they are resting in the same sand, etc. And the only moment that they split when they are going to eat, because they guys eat plants, succulents and other plants that are in the inland. And this one goes to swim and eat algae that is in the rocks. This is the only one that is diving. This is the only diving iguana in the world. It has a lot of specialization associated with the diving style. Of course, the skin is softer. It has the salt gland. It has a the nictitan membrane is very specialized, etc. And it has a lot of specialization, different from this one, associated to this diving way of living. But you know what what happened? If you give to this guy algae, he eat them. He eat algae. But if you give algae and succulent plants, they will like the succulent. And if you give this guy succulent, he eat the succulent, but he prefers the algae. And sometimes happen that this one, that even when as this guy eat algae, you see them going in the cliff over the sea, eating algae that are outside, that are above the sea level. And sometimes they goes down. And this guy goes to the water, so they swim to the coast. The ancestral one should be this one or this one. In the continental ones, iguana or Tenosauria. Both of them swim. Those are swimming iguanas. And this one can eat algae and always sometimes goes to the sea and eat algae in the sea.
Jorge, we have come to the end of our time now. We've been here for an hour and a half, and this is a good story to end with, I think.
Okay, this is the history I have. Living beings build themselves historically through his actions. It's like this. This guy is hammering with that rock. This is a hammer, Paleolithic hammer. And this, of course, is a hammer. You don't have this if you don't have this. You don't have this if you don't have the action of hammer. To hammer makes the hammer. To see makes the eye. to hen makes the hen. This is natural drift. This is drift in biology and the natural drift in particular. So that's why that is what you are asking me, Pile. You can see here this is a cultural thing, of course, because if you have the hammer, the whole world, if you have hammering, your world change so much that you are going to build a hammer. And when you have the hammer, the world will change around, hammering with hammers.
Thank you. Thank you very much from all of us. Thank you for being willing to come and talk to us and leave us with many things to think about, or as somebody put, a shift in perspective more than anything else, to think of things as arising through the behavior rather than being there. So
Thank you, Jorge.
Thank you.
I look